Morning. Let's find out what we learned from the past week 4. Winfield, of course, picked up a big win over McGoffin County in the homecoming game. Great night, great weather-wise, great crowd, and they picked up 11 points. That is 9 base points and 2 bonus points based on McGoffin County's 2 prior wins to that. And so those were something I call, and I'm going to kind of touch on this here in a bit, is the first level points. I know that maybe that's something new, that's not something SSAC describes as in their points, but something I like to talk about is first level points. But so just give it a minute. I'll talk about first level points, what I consider first level points, and what I consider second level points. But again, it was a big win as far as like the homecoming and 11-point victory. So let's quickly just kind of run down the week. Hoover beat Lincoln County, which again was point-wise was another 1.2 points banked for Winfield. So for the week, Winfield secured 12.2 points. Shady lost to Oak Hill. Ripley beat Point Pleasant, which means that when the time comes that when Winfield plays Ripley, there's going to be some points banked there, so some opportunities to grab points there. GW beat South Charleston. Princeton had a bye week. Nitro beat Riverside, so that's another common opponent point situation where the points don't mean a whole lot because one team or the other, and Winfield's going to get both of them. So again, that's a situation where when they play Nitro, that's an opportunity to bank more points. As far as like in the state goes, I just want to point out one game. Fairmont Senior beat North Marion, and the reason why I'm pointing that out is because that was a really big game for both teams. And both teams are vying for maybe to get in the top 4 spots, which I think is kind of a really big deal. And so Fairmont Seniors win's going to be a really big one over North Marion because North Marion's going to win a lot of football games. So that's going to be a lot of points that Fairmont Seniors going to bank. But it doesn't. Again, I've talked about this before. Like with Winfield's loss to Hoover, it's not a killer for North Marion because of the strength of schedule component. That's going to give them an opportunity to still pick up a lot of points because Fairmont Senior is going to win a lot of football games this year. All right, so that's kind of the week that was. And like I said, I kind of alluded to, I want to talk about what I consider first level points and what I consider second level points. In addition to that, I kind of want to give you another perspective how to look at the computer rankings and the computer points. Just kind of my way of looking at it. It's kind of a way to kind of to look at it in a different view. But again, I'll just touch on that real quick when I share my screen, and we'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, so let's just jump into it, and let me explain to you again what I mean by first level points and second level points. And again, this is kind of the way of thinking of it. This is not an SSA thing or anything like that. Obviously they define it as you earn base points, bonus points, and strength of schedule points. But basically, just in a nutshell, the first level points are those points that I think are in your control. And way I define those as the base points and for the most part the bonus points, and I'll just kind of briefly explain using my working manual log here with Winfield, and you can see how the schedule built out. And in the first 4 weeks, Lincoln County, Hoover, South Charleston, McGoffin County, and obviously they've gone 3-1 in the first 4 weeks. And each of the wins, they earn the base points based on the designation, the size of the school. McGoffin County, because it's a Kentucky school, and because of the size of the school, they designate it as a AA school if it were to be in West Virginia. That's why its base points are 9 comparatively to Lincoln County, Hoover, and South Charleston's base points are 12. Now I'll let you look at column D that shows, what I've done is I just simply put down all the potential base points that you could earn. And then E is the win-loss. You can see a W and or an L depending on the situation. And I don't put a score down because in this case, the score is of no real consequence, as far as the computer points are concerned. In column F, you see what they've earned. And so obviously, since the loss to Hoover, you don't earn base points with a loss, so that's why it's a 0. So it's like let's just go to Lincoln County. You earn 12 base points, and then column G is the wins, and that is I update it to the wins to this point in time in the season. So Lincoln County is winless, but then you see South Charleston. If you go down to their row 3, with the win, Winfield earned 12 base points with the win over South Charleston, and South Charleston won their first game over Ripley, so that was a 13-point win. And just like I just said in the first segment, I said that it was an 11-point win with Magoffin County, because again, if you see the row 4 and you see under F, you see that Magoffin, earned Winfield 9 base points plus Magoffin County's 2 wins to date, which is an 11-point win. Now, like I said, I consider that under your control. That's why first level points to me are those points under your control. Because you can bank the points that because if you win the ball game, you're going to get those base points. And even let's look ahead just a little bit. Even the next opponent, Princeton. If you see Princeton, again, is a AAA school, so a win versus them would be 12 base points. And if you see what I've done is I have in parentheses beside each of the team's names, I have 3/3.3. Now I'll briefly explain what that is. The first 3 represents the number of wins Princeton has, again, to this point in time in the season. And then the backslash is basically 10% of the strength of schedule points if they were to lose. So what I've done is I've just kind of given myself a little heads up, so going forward, so that I know where things stood at that point in time. So I don't always have to, work backward. But a win over Princeton would be worth 15 points. So that would be, you are able to bank 15 points. So, and then again, you can just imagine how that's built out all the way going forward. Ripley, again, that at this point in time in the season, that's also a 15-point win. Now, the Princeton plays, on week 4. So if they were to win, that 3 becomes a 4. So that a win over Princeton would be a 16-point game. And then again, Ripley, Shady Spring, Nitro, Riverside, Point Pleasant. Even though it says Point Pleasant with no wins, whatever wins Point Pleasant has at that point in time, you add that to the base points, and that's how many points you're able to bank. And those are the points that are in your control. And obviously, the later you get into the season, the more control you have, because if you were to face a team that say had won 9 games, and you would get 9 on top of the base points, and those completely in your control by winning the game. Now the second level points are those strength of schedule points, and that's why I'd say I think you once you've lost the ball game, you've kind of lost control. I've talked about it before. I felt like the Hoover loss is not winning is always better, yeah, sure, but losing is and losing to good teams is if you're going to lose, you want to lose to good teams. So again, I've kind of scrolled over. You see 3.6 points on column H is what Winfield has gotten so far with Hoover, and that's because Hoover has won 3 games against AAA teams. So they've gotten 12 base points for each win, and you get 10% of their base points. So it's 1.2 plus 1.2 plus 1.2. So that's my explanation for as far as the why I call things first level points or second level points. I guess you can call this the coach speak because it's all about doing those things that are in your control, and it's all about banking points. And that kind of gets me into my next little thing about how it is I want to maybe kind of show you how to observe, the rankings in the points, the computer points. Just maybe give it a little bit of a different look instead of looking at it in terms of the averages. Look at it in total, the total points. And here, let me switch screens and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so now you see this on my logbook. What I have worked out is I have 24 of the 28 teams. I don't have them all simply because you get to a certain point where some of the teams are, and if you can look in the bottom, you see my bracketologies, where I'll show that to you in a minute too. The out of contention, on the bubble, and the contenders, and so basically the ones that are out of contention, I'm just not including here. Doesn't mean I haven't worked out their numbers and things like that. I just simply am just not including them here. But if you notice, my 1 through 24 does not mirror the 1 through 24 if you would go on to West Virginia Tailgate Central. That's not because I'm just devising a brand new system and the rig system is not in play here. The SSAC is not adopting my system, other than the fact that what I've done is I'm counting the total points up to this point in the season, and I'm not using the divisor. And the divisor is the number of games each team has played. Now, granted, things are relative because everybody has a bye week. Winfield's bye week's this week. So right now, if you see on mine, I have Winfield in the 8th position with 39.6 points. And on the West Virginia Tailgate Central, I think they're in 11th position if I remember correctly. But like next week, they're not going to hold number 8. And the reason why I'm not going to hold number 8 is because they have the ability to bank points this week. Was say a win by Hoover would help them bank points, and if Lincoln County would happen to win a game, or South Charleston would win a game, they would bank points, but their points they would bank would be minimal because since when you don't play a game, you're not getting those much added base points. So they would drop in my rankings because when you have a bye week they drop. But I look at things as in the totality of the numbers. Now, the one reason why they use a divisor is because it allows people to have fun with the rankings through the season. So you can kind of just see where everybody's ranked, and if you didn't use a divisor, you would come up with what I have right here, because you would have the total points instead of the average points. But by having the being able to just divide by the number of games played, you kind of get like, okay, but here's the thing, it doesn't matter until all the games are played. There is no if the playoffs were to start today, because they don't do that. So I just use I'm just using the total points, because the other thing I'll say is every team plays 10 games, so it really doesn't matter. So it really does not matter what the average is. It's still all about total points, and these total points are a reflection of base points, bonus points, and strength of schedule points. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I have built out for the remainder of the year. Now, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of games left to be played, a whole lot of games left to be played. Not just by these. What I'll call first level games, the games that are in control of the AAA teams, but there's a lot of games left to be played by all the AAA teams' opponents. Even though there's a lot of common opponents, there's still a lot of games left to be played. So I'm not going to tell you that these numbers are, oh gosh, you should carve them in stone like I've got it perfect. No, I don't think so. But I will show you what I've gotten so far, and just again, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, these can and will absolutely change. So some of these numbers are very, very close, and I'll go ahead and scroll over, and I'll bring forward who my top, in this case, 22 teams are, and where I think there's a possibly, not definitely, not absolutely, but possibly, their numbers will fall come season's end. And so, I won't necessarily tell you what my predictions are at this point, because the only way to do this is to predict games. You can't do it without it. But this is what I have at this point. And so everybody's wondering, everybody sees it. I know everybody's eyes are going to get drawn to it because I do it too. The first team I'm looking at is Winfield. And I have Winfield right there in the 9th position, right behind Nitro at 8. But here's the thing about what I'm going to say, and this is again the perspective of looking at this, and this is kind of a coach speak thing. You got the opportunity each week ahead of you. You have the opportunity to bank points every week. So I look at it as, I'm not looking ahead for the whole season. I look at it in a week-to-week basis to see those opportunities to bank points. Because, again, I'm not looking at it at an average. I'm looking at it like I'm sure all of you have seen it by now because I'm not hiding it. Top 4, top 8, top 12, top 16. This is my very early season prediction of how many points each threshold would be. So in order to get into the top 16, I think you need 105 points or more. Top 12, 120, top 8, 140, and top 4, 157 and a half. That kind of coincides with what I have on the left, and that's the only thing I really have to go on as far as that goes. As far as I need to have something to base those numbers on, and that's what I have. But that's what I think. And of course, obviously, your first thing is to get in the playoffs. So right now, let's say this: Winfield is at. Let's scroll back over. How many points does Winfield have right now? 39.6. All right, now I'll go back. 39.6. So quick math. 70 or so more points. Just if you want to count it that way, to get themselves in the playoffs. So these next week, they have the opportunity to grab probably 16 points from Princeton because with a victory over Princeton. So that just cuts into it. You're just banking points. You're just filling up your whatever you want to, your jar, if you want to use it like that. You just keep filling it up. And then once you get to that point, once you get 106 points or more, now your next goal is 120 plus, and then 140 plus, and so on. Because once you get them, once you bank those points, you don't lose those points. You're only going to accumulate points from there on out. Points don't go down; they always go up. But anyway, that's my perspective. I guess it's kind of a coach's perspective, both on the first and second level type of talk, as well as the perspective to kind of look at how you just kind of each week you have the opportunity to bank points and just keep climbing the ladder and catching and getting to that next level, that next threshold as far as getting that. Now, here's the reason why I broke it down into four and into these four. It's not just because it's just fours. It's just simply because obviously you want to get in the playoffs, top 16. But for me, my money, you want be at least in the top 12, so you avoid the top 4. Although there's maybe more than 4 teams who would be difficult. But I'm just saying you want to kind of maybe stay out of that top. Go and having to travel to one of those top 4 teams. And obviously you want to be in the top 8 to get a home playoff game if you can. All right, so before we kind of wrap up this little segment, I'll talk about 2 other things real quick. One of them is I've talked for a couple of weeks now about Team A, Team B.
Team A, again, is the team that has 2 AAA teams on their schedule, 6 AA teams on the schedule, and 2 single A teams on their schedule. And then Team B was the team that has 6 4A teams and then 4 AAA teams. And then I kind of gave you a little clue to last week. I said at that point last week, Team A's opponents, both past and future, had 16 wins, and Team B's had 14 at that point. So I'm not going to quite reveal who those teams are yet, but I will say, based on everything I've built out, I think Team A has an opportunity to go at least 8-2, if not 10-0. But I will say this: if they do not go 9-1 or better, they probably are going to miss the playoffs. And Team B, I think, has the opportunity to probably go either 6-4, maybe 8-2, probably most likely 7-3. But Team B not only would make the playoffs, but I think, and I might be giving something away here, but they get a home game in the playoffs. So that's the difference between, again, the opportunity you build yourself when your schedule comes out, how you can bank points, because they have the chance to bank a whole lot more points. And I'll use the same example I used last week. 3 of the 6 wins over those quad A or those 4A teams get you 45 points. That's for Team B. But Team A has to win 5 of the 6 games against the AA teams to get the same level of points. So, all right, so there's that. And now the last thing is my little bracketology. I don't want to hide that either. I have moved some teams around, some teams that have gone more or less out of contention or basically the same. But I have added 1 or 2. I don't know that I had Shady Spring in there last week, but right now Shady Spring is just out as far as I'm concerned. Bubble teams. There were some teams that moved, and actually Lewis County moved from being out to being on the bubble because of what I think was a pretty big win over East Fairmont. And to look ahead at their schedule, I think they got some doable wins on that schedule. Real doable wins on that schedule. And then you see that Ripley, Capital, Greenbrier East have kind of moved themselves out of the contender spot into the on the bubble, and now finally the contenders. I have Bridgeport, Fairmont Senior, Princeton, Hoover, and now I've added North Marion as locks, absolute locks. Likely ends, Hampshire, Nitro, and I added Winfield to that. And again, this is all projectable stuff. And it's all extremely fluid. You can move yourself in, you can move yourself out. It depends on how you play. And then John Marshall, and then you see the last 4 that I have in the mix: Pikeview, Elkins, East Fairmont, and Kaiser. All right, so that's it. All right, so we'll just kind of start wrapping this up. We'll talk about this week's games, and you may have already be seeing this on Saturday because I'm doing this very late in the week. It took me a little while to build this out, and I just wanted to make sure to have it everything I wanted to be able to share with you. So again, we'll just kind of wrap up the show with just a look ahead, which might be, in a sense, a look behind if you were seeing this on Saturday.
All right, so I hope you kind of enjoyed my little perspective on what I consider the first level points and what I consider the second level points, and also why it is I think that looking at the computer rankings and the points as a whole, and being able to week by week bank points, earn points, because it's always an opportunity to each week to gain more points. It's sort of a coach perspective in that you're not looking too far ahead. You're just looking at every week as an opportunity to bank more points, so you can reach each of those levels. Again, get in the playoffs, top 12, top 8, and maybe top 4. So, all right, so let's real quickly, just kind of wrap this up and just kind of go over what everyone else is doing this week, because we know Winfield's on a bye. So Estelle County, Kentucky is at Magoffin County, Kentucky. The homecoming opponent that was. Capital is at South Charleston. Riverside is at Parkersburg. Ripley is at Nitro, another common opponent games. Hoover is at Point Pleasant, another one. Lincoln County is at Brooke. Graham, Virginia is at Princeton. That, of course, is Princeton is the next opponent after this bye week for Winfield. And Pikeview is at Shady Spring. All right, so that's it. So that's the week. And so again, I kind of wanted to take the opportunity this week, to be given as the bye week, to kind of just share with you a couple things as far as like my perspective on the rankings and the points. And so going forward, we'll talk about just a little bit about that matchup, that Winfield Princeton. We'll talk about that next week, and we'll talk more about how the points are going to lay themselves out, and hopefully have a little more fun with that. I appreciate everybody watching. Talk to you next week. Thanks.